Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of the official DOIJ podcast. Today we're going to be telling you about, I'm going to be telling you about two things. So, first off, today, for those of you who don't know, Saturday, I believe March 30th, we, being the U.S., have, for the first time in 9 years, almost 10, almost a decade there, and first time in 9 years, we have launched, United States astronauts on U.S. soil in a U.S.-made rocket up in space, obviously. And, they are on their way to the International Space Station. They should be docking there about sometime, I think 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 10:30, something like that, Eastern Time tomorrow in the morning. So, yeah, that's very big news. Now on to the next thing. For those of you, which I don't know who would know of this by now, but for those of you who do not know, over during Memorial Day in the U.S., a man by the name of George Floyd, which was basically murdered. I mean, let's just put it that way. I mean, he was basically murdered. That's what I'm calling it, and you'll know why I'm calling it that in a minute. But basically, how it started, I'm gonna give you the brief version. Obviously, there's an article on it on the LA Times, and I'm pretty sure every newspaper, big and small, and everywhere in between, has done an article on it, at least maybe 2 or 3, I would say. As updates came in, but what happened is Mr. Floyd gave a store clerk a $20 bill that was fake, that was counterfeit, and so the cops are called. The officer responded, and the guy was in his car. He had units that come. They got him out of the car, and the guy and Mr. Floyd didn't want to get in the cop car. Apparently, he was drunk, and now, according to reports and according to witnesses, before he even got on the ground, he was basically complaining that he couldn't breathe. And the officers were ignoring that, and then one of the officers decided to go ahead and once they got him on the ground, he put his knee on his neck, and the report says that the officer's knee was on Mr. Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, and the entire time, the majority of that time, Mr. Floyd was saying how he could not breathe. I watched the video. That's a little less than 2 minutes, I believe, that the LA Times has here. So, and I mean, he was complaining that he couldn't breathe. The officers, did have him under his knee for pretty much the entire time. And then when I think it was EMS finally arrived, another officer finally arrived, or whatever. I think it was EMS. It was kind of hard to tell from the video, because the video is kind of more angled towards the ground. I mean, it still showed Mr. Floyd, but at that point you could tell that he was dead. I mean, I'm not gonna beat around the bush. He was dead. You could tell by the way he just was just limp. There was no life in him, in Mr. Floyd whatsoever. By the time they were trying to roll him onto his back, he wasn't passed out. He was gone. Which that shouldn't have happened. I mean, and I know during a lot of situations, officer-involved situations, they say you shouldn't really be second guessing, an officer split-second decision, but that wasn't a split-second decision. Before anybody, says, oh, you can't be guessing, so officer split-second decision. And normally that is true. If it is a split-second decision, if it is a life or death split-second decision, that would come into play. That would be true. But like I said, that keeping the officer keeping his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck for 2 minutes, 4 minutes even, especially 8 minutes, almost 9 minutes, was not a split-second decision, especially considering the entire time he was complaining about how he could not breathe. The officer ignored his calls of distress, that he could not breathe, and he said, oh, you're breathing fine. And now, according to the medical report, he did not die of asphyxiation. He did not die due to the officer's knee being on his neck. But I'm sure that definitely didn't help. So now I don't know how hard the officer's knee was pressed down on his neck, but still, I only saw 2 officers in there. Apparently, there were 4 officers involved. Whatever. I've only read this one. This one article on this, but it's from a very trusted, reliable source. So I did not focus on the what Mr. Floyd did in the past. I did not reading. It mentions their past relationships. I don't care about the past relationships. I care about the fact. I don't care about their exact emotions towards each other, unless it mentions racial emotions, which article did mention that the officer did have racial. I don't know the correct word for this. I don't want to say something that'll get me this video removed from YouTube. But let's just say he wasn't exactly nice towards another race. He didn't not favor, but he did not think highly of another race. The race that Mr. Floyd just happened to be. But the point is, the officer had his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck. The other officer, was standing there trying to keep back the crowd, which the crowd wasn't really moving at all. They were standing on the sidewalk, so I mean, that they weren't really a threat to anything. But basically, both the officers, and if there were other officers involved, nobody did anything. Nobody, tried to check on him and take his knee off the neck. Because remember, at this point he's cuffed. The officer has him on the ground. He's cuffed. So I mean, I don't know what you think he's gonna do, but yeah. So and then according to these people that are protesting, because of Mr. Floyd's tragic murder, which again I'm calling it a murder because yes, he didn't die because of the officer's knee or leg on his neck, but the officers still didn't do anything. They still didn't even try to help. They just, now I'm sure they were the ones that called EMS. I mean, hey, maybe the civilians were the ones called. I don't know who called the EMS. Whether the officers did or the civilians did, bystanders, witnesses, whatever. Person driving by called 911 or called the 911 EMS, whatever. Doesn't matter. The fact is that these officers didn't do anything. They basically disregarded that this guy, even though he was drunk, he and saying that he can't breathe. If someone's saying you can't breathe, even if you think they're faking it, as you're as really anybody, as a citizen, as an officer, as a human, you should maybe try and make them a little more comfortable. I mean, because there are ways that you can make them comfortable, but make sure they don't run away in cuffs. I mean, you can still sit them up, try and get in a more comfortable position than with your knee on their neck. But now, because of Mr. Floyd's death, or at least as these people are claiming, people are they're kind of protesting. They're not really protesting. They want to call it protest, but it's really more like riots, which really shouldn't be happening. Because, yeah, Mr. Floyd's murder was tragic, but those were the non-actions of a few police officers. Again, non-actions because they didn't do anything. The officers basically didn't do anything. And most police officers are here to help people. And there are always, and I mean there are always going to be a few bad officers or a few bad people in the bunch. But those, but the ones that are the good officers, the ones that care about the communities and the people in their communities, and are actually there to help their communities, shouldn't be treated so terribly because a few of the bad officers, especially a few bad officers in a different state, did something they're not supposed to, like in this case, murder somebody. Right? Because keep in mind, these protests that are going on, they're not just going on in Minneapolis, in the town where this happened. These are going on all over the United States, where these protesters are, they're basically being violent towards each other, burning down communities, whether it's their own community, someone else's community, whatever. They're being violent towards officers. They're vandalizing, first responder vehicles. And honestly, the dream of an America where there's no more racism is a dream most people share, myself included. But sadly, it is just that. It is a dream. Because just like how there will always be those bad officers in the department, those bad kids on the school ground, basically the bad apples in the bunch, or on the tree, whatever the saying is, there will always be some people that are racist. And these so-called protests, they aren't helping anyone, especially when they turn violent. I mean, and let's just forget the fact that we are still in the middle of a very deadly virus pandemic. With the whole COVID-19 thing, and how they're going to be basically spreading it now, and I guarantee you, a good chunk of those people are going to catch it, and part of those people are going to die of COVID again. But let's just forget that fact for now, and instead let's focus on how those who are protesting and trying to claim, because some of these people are trying to claim that Black Lives Matter, justice for Floyd, and how they're upset that the officers were violent against a civilian, which yes led to his death, but in turn they are the ones hurting their communities, and the officers that genuinely care about their communities more than all the officers who don't care, who are racist, and all the racist and generally violent for no reason people, the people that are just violent for absolutely no reason. They're going to be violent no matter what. So the officers that don't care and those violent people combined could ever do. Instead of tearing each other down, tearing another part of town or anyone down, basically tearing anyone or anything down, we should be doing what we do after 9/11. School shootings, mass shootings, and other attacks on our communities. And that is, we should be banding together and helping each other. Instead of violent protests, we should be protesting peacefully. And keep in mind, the officers, which have been fired, they will face justice. Because, one has been charged with murder, last I heard, and the others, the DA, the district attorney, and basically the officers of the law, the good officers of the law, they are, trying to figure out exactly who is guilty, and sooner or later they will face justice. I guarantee it. So I don't know why I genuinely do not understand why these people are protesting, or really are rioting over something that, it's and something that they claim. Some of them are claiming that, how can we trust the justice system? If they were to actually look at the justice system and look and see what's going on, right? And you look and see that these people are being charged with, with the crimes. So these people are, basically being hunted down by the justice system. The justice system is trying to do its part. So there shouldn't be these riots, at least not yet, which there really shouldn't be any riots, period. But if you're going to riot, don't do it before, the justice system has even really had a chance. Because it hasn't been a week. Right? It hasn't been a week, and we're already having these violent protests. Which, again, are basically just riots. Is really all they really are. And it really shouldn't be happening, especially not this early. And, yeah. So, that's our message to everyone out there, is if you get this message, just please go ahead and share this, and let's put an end to these so-called protests. I mean, there's a way to get your message across, which again, nobody really needs to be doing this, because the message was put across when it happened and when the charges got filed on whenever it was Friday, whatever. So either way, the charges are being filed. The charges are going to be filed, and justice is going to happen for Mr. Floyd and his family. And with that said, please share this message, and let's see if we can put an end to this violence before somebody else gets killed, basically. Because eventually, at this rate, with people attacking each other, burning down each other's communities, and attacking the police, and attacking but basically anybody that they see, somebody's gonna get killed. And if that happens, which I really hope it doesn't, but if that happens, they will have nothing to blame but themselves. So let's stop all this violence, all this stupidity, and protest peacefully. I mean, go out there, and I'm not saying you can't protest, but you shouldn't. I'm not saying you shouldn't protest, because it's wrong. It's wrong. You have your right to protest. In America, you have your right to protest, and as long as you protest peacefully, I have no problem with it. But I do have a problem with, like I said, is where people claim they're protesting, and really all they're doing is they're inciting violence. And they're using this as an excuse to get angry. And I know it's, a factor of this is also because we've been, basically locked in our houses, right? Or locked in our apartments, right? Because of the pandemic. So we're all a little stir crazy. But, just like, how we're in the pandemic together. We're in the world together. So, like I said, instead of being violent and showing violence towards, the officers that did it, show compassion and, yeah, that's it. Just show compassion, man. I mean, just don't be violent towards them. Show compassion. If you really want justice to be served, then you keep an eye on it. And if you find where like the DA or something kind of screwed up in the case, or about to screw up in the case, you have evidence towards them, then do that. But you don't need to be rioting in another city, definitely not another state. Because right now you're just using it as an excuse. And it's ridiculous, and you need to stop. So that's this episode of the official DOIJ podcast. There will be no link to anything in the description, because that is not the point of this podcast. The point of this episode is to get out that message that I've said, that I'm putting out there. So again, there will be no link in the description. Maybe to an article or something, or if there's like a GoFundMe for Mr. Floyd's family, I'll see if I can find that and put that up there. But it's a hard enough time already for everybody, and now Mr. Floyd's family is having to go through this tragedy, and now all is over the news. So just stop with this violence. Mr. Floyd and his family are in my prayers and everyone's prayers over here at the official DOIJ podcast. So thank you all so much for listening. Please spread this message. please, spread this video around. Let's see if we can stop this violence, this needless, stupid, stupidity violence, before more people get killed. Because the last thing I think anyone would want, especially Mr. Floyd and his family, is for more people to die because of Mr. Floyd's needless death. So there you have it. Stay tuned. Stay awesome. Thank you all so much for listening.